This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. It's been a little while. I'm joined with Eddie Hearn.
You're kind of senior executive now, I feel. You've got your little soldiers that you send around the world and you sort of sit there. I imagine if you got like some kind of pussycat that you just go meow, meow, and just sort of, is that what you do now?
I think if we...
and now you've got your podcast, which I'm doing tomorrow, your association with Sporf, your deal with Betfred as well, one of our partners. You're absolutely flying, Boxing Social.
What are you flattering me for? I know it's the first time I've not seen you in a while, but I'm not used to this side of you, Eddie. What do you want?
I'm pleased for you. I like to see people do well. Well done, Robert.
Thank you very much, Edward. Let's talk about the show this weekend. Derek Chisora versus Joseph Parker. Feels like it's come around really quickly, but we're here now. What do you make of the fight?
Not just the fight, the card is a brilliant card. I mean, everyone always goes on about 50-50 fights, and sometimes I think we don't do enough of those. It's very difficult to have lots of them when you're trying to bring fighters through at different stages in their career. On Saturday, you have 4 genuine 50-50 championship fights. Derek Chisora against Joseph Parker, Carlos Gongora against Lerone Richards, Zelfa Barrett against Bruno Tarimo, and Jack Cullen against Sergio. And they are all complete pick-em fights and brilliant fights as well. So I know that the heavyweights will always get the attention, and you know Del Boy's a massive draw with Parker and stuff like that. And I think we'll get a brilliant fight. I don't think that fight will go 12 rounds. But this card, throw Alan Babbage in there as well for a bit of fun. David Naika, Jordan Thompson, Sandy Ryan, Rihanna Dixon, Cyrus Patterson. This is a brilliant, brilliant night of boxing on Saturday.
Starting the main event, work our way down. Derek Chisora. I told you it's a bit rusty. Derek Chisora versus Joseph Parker. I mean, I'm quite looking forward to the fight. I'm going to put it out there, but there are some people who maybe weren't so much. What can we expect to see on Saturday night? You've got two guys really sort of in that second tier of heavyweights.
I believe, were you at the first fight? No. Okay, well, behind closed doors, no crowd, no atmosphere, right, was a good fight. That same fight in an arena, we're going to have about 11 or 12,000 there on Saturday night. That same number in the arena is going to be a brilliant atmosphere. This will be a better fight because I think both guys don't want to go to the wire. Both guys don't want to go the distance. Chisora's had enough of things going to the scorecards. Parker wants to make a statement. He looks lighter, he looks fitter. He's had more time with Andy Lee. And I think both guys are going to go for it. And I think the fight will be over in 8 rounds. I really do. Either way. I think someone's going to get chinned. And, you know, Dell's now teamed up with Dave Coldwell. Parker's had more time with Andy Lee. 2 great trainers, 2 great fighters, 2 great heavyweights, 2 great guys. I think they're going to put on a great fight for us. And obviously, Manchester Arena, you know, last time Dell boxed there was the Dillian Whyte fight 5 years ago. And he says he's going to give us another cracker. And I believe him.
Oh, we look forward to that. Where does the winner go? I mean, you know better than anybody at the minute, the heavyweight division. Obviously, we're waiting to see what happens with Joshua, Usyk, Fury-Whyte. But where does the winner of this go? Obviously, Joseph Parker, former WBO champion, well ranked across all governing bodies. What lies ahead for the winner?
I think that, without speaking on either of their behalf, I think they're both at different sort of mindsets in their career. Chisora loves to fight, right? Chisora's a prize fighter. He wants to make as much money as possible to have as an exciting fight as possible. Joseph Parker has dreams of becoming a 2-time world heavyweight champion, but there is a logjam. Do you know what I mean? So if you're Joseph Parker right now, you're looking at it and saying, okay, WBC, Dillian Whyte's in line. IBF, you know, Parker, if he wins this, could fight Hrgovic in a final eliminator for that IBF belt. WBO, you got Joe Joyce sitting there. You know, WBA, you got about 4 different scenarios thrown up. So it is a little bit of logjam, and I think this is one of the reasons why Parker, after that win, chose to take the rematch, because he knew it was a big money fight, an exciting fight, and he thinks it's a fight he should win easier than he did last time. I don't know who I think should have won last time. If I'm having a conversation with Derek, it was definitely him. But if he can make a statement, I think it puts him in a great position in the heavyweight landscape. If he loses, he's fucked. And Del Boy's actually not as fucked if he loses, because he doesn't. I don't think Del Boy's sitting there now thinking, I want a shot at the World Heavyweight Championship. He just wants to stay in the game and keep fighting because he loves it. But both desperate for the win, and you know, like I said, Parker and Andy Lee, aspirations to go on and get a shot at the World Heavyweight title. I'm sure Derek would love to as well, but like I said, he's a prize fighter. He loves to fight for the fans, for the crowd, and he loves to have a tear up, and that's why everybody always tunes in to watch him.
Before we talk about the undercard, let's talk about one fight that we were due to see, Joshua Buatsi versus Maxim Vlasov. Buatsi pulling out of a hand injury. Are you looking at potentially rescheduling that? Do you think Buatsi will go elsewhere? Obviously, again, the light heavyweight division, there's a lot of potentials there.
Yeah, it was a good fight, and people were excited about that fight, and the response we got makes me feel like we should definitely reschedule that fight. Everyone's queuing up right now. You know, you've got Anthony Yarde, you've got Buatsi, you've got Callum Johnson's fighting Joe Smith. What's Canelo going to do? Is he going to fight 175 pounds? So the champions are looking at it saying, okay, what am I doing? And I'm looking at pushing Buatsi. If I can get Bivol for Buatsi in March or April when he's ready, would he go straight into that fight? Or do we do Buatsi against Craig Richards in a really good domestic fight? You know, we want to try and see more of those type of stuff as well. Or do we just make the Vlasov fight again? Do you know what I mean? Craig Richards wants a shot at the world. But not everyone's going to get one. So rather than wait around, you have to keep active, be in big fights, big money fights if you can as well. And I think for if we can't get a world title for Buatsi, it will be Vlasov or Richards next.
Well, we're kind of floating around those names. A name that's just popped into my head, John Ryder and Danny Jacobs. I saw the tweet yesterday, the potential for those two to face. What can you tell me about that fight?
We're in talks. I never thought it could happen, because when I signed Danny Jacobs, I always said you need to fight in the UK. He's always been desperate to fight in the UK. Obviously, boxed Canelo Alvarez, or boxed Derevyanchenko, beat him. Boxed Canelo, lost. Came back, beat Julio Cesar Chavez. The draw with Rosado in a poor fight, really. And now he's in a situation where he needs to do something different because of that performance, in my opinion. So fair play to him. He's considering coming to London and fighting John Ryder in a really, really good fight. And it would be a big for us to bring Danny Jacobs to the UK for that fight. And this is a bit of a personal crusade for John Ryder, because, you know, he had that very close fight with Callum Smith, and we had the Morrell fight, then we were looking at the Bivol fight, and obviously Tony Sims is a good friend of mine and he loves John Ryder. They're like family, so I feel personally indebted to provide him a great opportunity and to get Daniel Jacobs in the UK. Ryder's a big underdog in that fight, but what a chance to have a massive profile fight. You go and beat Danny Jacobs, then you can start talking about, is the Canelo Alvarez fight in the UK? You know, if Canelo's saying, I want to fight in the UK, right now, I'm looking at John Ryder, people might say, if you go and beat Danny Jacobs in style, that's the kind of fight, or you become a candidate. Do you know what I mean? But still a way to go on the negotiations for that fight, but I'm trying to bring Danny Jacobs over to fight in London in early February.
You mentioned Callum Smith there, another one in that light heavyweight mix, admittedly kind of slightly above because of his exploits at 168. What's the latest with him? So his manager Paul Reddy here?
Yeah, it's like when we talk about the domestic scene, I don't often mention Callum Smith because those fights are still great fights, but Callum, you know, I had a meeting with him last week, he just wants to fight for the world title. Joe Smith, Dimitri Bivol, any of those, Beterbiev, any of those guys now, he's not looking at Buatsi and Yarde and Richards and those kind of people. In time, with a world title or whatever, they may be fights, but I never really mention him in that domestic scene because I put him above that scene. He was Ring Magazine champion at 168, he boxed Canelo, and he's right at the top of the list for challenging. But at the same time, what we said was, he said, I want to box in April. So if you can't get me Smith, Bivol or Beterbiev in April, I'm boxing. So we need to find the right kind of fights. But all these people are treading water, and that's why I said, sooner or later you might just say, right guys, you know, Callum against Buatsi, Richards against Callum. But Callum right now is the one that doesn't need any other fights. He just wants to jump straight in for the world title.
Before we come back to this card, you mentioned Canelo Alvarez's name. We've got the Makabu fight that was ordered by the WBC. I see Bob Arum talking about potential for Artur Beterbiev and Joe Smith. You've got PBC talking about Benavidez, Jamal Charlo. You're one of the team, Eddie. You're Canelo's guy. What can you tell me?
For me, obviously, look, Eddie Reynoso and Canelo Alvarez will make the decision, not me, funnily enough. But I feel like, having been around him, he loves a plan that's historic, groundbreaking, exciting. And for me, that is trying to become undisputed at 175 pounds, right? Obviously, we've got Dimitri Bivol. I can make that fight like that, right? Joe Smith, I'm sure that fight can be made, and Beterbiev. And that's probably the route I'd take. Because I remember when we sat down with him and Eddie, and we looked at 68, and I said, look, I can get you Callum Smith. If you win that fight, we've got Billy Joe Saunders, and then Caleb Plant, you know, might not be with us, but it's a natural fight. Now you're in the same situation at 175 pounds to say, okay, Bivol, Joe Smith, Beterbiev. And being a network free agent like he is, you know, you could do one on DAZN, one on ESPN, whatever. Doesn't really matter. And I feel like that's the kind of plan that might get him excited. The cruiserweight option is definitely exciting for him as well. That's another historic fight because it's a new world championship in a different weight class. Then you've got Gennady Golovkin, see what happens with Murata and lockdowns and travel and everything. But after I spoke to both of them in the last 3 or 4 days, and the plan is to speak very early January, and I will present my thoughts and options as well, along with everybody else, and then hopefully we get the pick. But I like that plan.
Back to this card, Lerone Richards versus Carlos Gongora is a fantastic fight. It's been a really stacked end to the year so far, and that's probably one of, for me, trade fight, whatever you want to call it. I'm really looking forward to that one.
Well, brilliant fight because, they're both guys that the top guys don't really, Lerone is very slick. He's not awkward, but he's very good. And he's a guy, a bit like Demetrius Andrade. He's got a long way to go to those accolades, but a guy that you sort of look at and go, And Carlos Gongora is a guy that the top guys go, no, we'll swerve him. He's dangerous. He can punch. He's tough. So bring them together and kind of like winner stays on at world level. Now, I looked at the odds for this fight with our partners Betfred, and it's very interesting to see that Gongora is a big favourite in the fight. What I can tell you is, and I'll talk more about it at the press conference, people don't realise, like, promoting and matchmaking and staging fights is only about 100th as difficult as fighting. But it's really, really hard work in this environment with these restrictions. And on Sunday, Carlos Gongora was due to travel and there was an issue with his visa. So he actually only arrived. He won't be here today because he's in London driving up. So he actually arrived yesterday. So prep-wise, and Gongora's not the kind of guy that will really be overly affected by that. He boxed Akhmedov on, I think, 10 days' notice and beat him. So, but still, like, this fight was very nearly off. Very nearly off. And when you're waiting for a visa stamp and you're checking up every half an hour and you know that you've got to go back to Dave Coldwell, go back to Lerone Richards and say, mate, I'm really sorry, this fight's off. It's a horrible, horrible place to be. And we got, shout out to Jay, shout out to Sean Palmer, all our legal team, who were just working around the clock with a Home Office, Ecuador Embassy. I mean, it was just a disaster. So, first things first, thank God the fight is on. He has arrived 2 days later than he would have liked, but he's on weight, he's fit, he's well, he's happy. This fight is a brilliant, brilliant fight because it's the kind of fight that can catapult and fast-track Lerone Richards into a player. Do you know what I mean? When you look at his accomplishments, he should be a player, but he hasn't been, in my mind, pushed in the right way, and some of his performances haven't been as exciting as maybe they could be. This will be exciting because Gongora will come to win, and Lerone, I think, will raise his game against a guy who is unquestionably a top 10 super middleweight in the world, Carlos Gongora. Unquestionably. You see that in the odds for this fight, so I cannot wait for this fight. It is a big, big fight, and I think it's going to go the full distance and right down to the wire in a really good one.
We'll try and skate on with it because I know we're going to get started soon. That's okay, it's no problem. Great fight. It's worth, yeah.
No, I found the story exciting. You didn't seem that excited with the story.
I was excited by the story, Eddie. But anyway, this past weekend we saw some great performances. I'm just going to talk about this young lady behind me here. She's got another thing to add to her ever-expanding trophy cabinet. Katie Taylor defended her undisputed lightweight crown. What lies ahead? Of course, we've got Amanda Serrano returning to action this weekend. That's got to be the fight to make in 2022, hasn't it, Ed?
Yeah, that is the fight. I'm a bit under pressure here now because she's looking at me. Yeah, but it's the only fight really. Without putting pressure on negotiations and on everything, it's the one we've wanted for a long, long time. And sometimes things happen for a reason and things work out because the fight is twice as big as it was when we were going to make it. Actually, it might be 3 times as big. And that's a mixture of the growth of women's boxing, Katie's performance, and also the job that Jake Paul has done for Amanda Serrano. Let's not ignore that. I mean, Saturday she's co-main event on another Showtime pay-per-view card, and they're both going to get paid unbelievably well. We're going to create the biggest boxing event in the history of women's boxing for the sport. And once that's out of the way, they have the contracts, we're going backwards and forwards. I think an announcement's imminent. It's just when. Katie's got a couple of niggles from the weekend. We looked at April, could it go into May? But it's around that time. And it'll be, in my opinion, the next fight for Katie Taylor and the next fight for Amanda Serrano. So it's one that we desperately want to see, and it's time now.
You've not got the Katie Taylor death stare, so I think you did all right with that one, Eddie. Well done.
Not to listen, but I know she was.
Elsewhere on the card, of course, Conor Benn looked fantastic in knocking out Chris Algieri in 4 rounds. Spoke to him yesterday. He wants Adrian Broner, Eddie. Is that realistic? Is that the fight? He said that Eddie Hearn is making that fight. So, again, all on you to deliver that.
Yeah, I've got a call with Mr. Broner tonight, actually. It's just whether... It's the weight with Broner. He's got it in his head that he's a 135 and 140, but he's never made it. Like, you know, I think if he lived the life, he could fight at 140, but he wants to have what I think he's described as a real final run in the sport. Now, is that coming to England in April to fight Conor Benn straight off the bat at 147, or is that having a fight in America and then fighting Conor Benn? Do you know what I mean? And we'll discover that tonight. So it's a great fight for Conor Benn. I thought he was sensational. He's a star. People can moan, but his development is absolutely perfect. His preparation is perfect. His team is perfect. The only thing that can derail this kid is himself, and he will not let that happen because he's a grafter. He's got a great mindset, and I'm so excited about his future. So that's good. Before, I just also want to just say about Zelfa Barrett against Bruno Tarimo. Not you know, telling you to do your job, Rob, but we've seen a lot of Australian success lately, and Bruno Tarimo, who actually looks more like a super bantamweight than a super featherweight, has had to take fights at this weight division because he couldn't get any at super bantam and feather. He now finds himself an eliminator for the IBF world title. The Aussies tell me this young man, this small man, is coming with unbelievable fire and tenacity. This is going to be a war of a fight. And I also want to say, well done to Jack Cullen, because when his fight against Emre Kuka for the European super middleweight title fell out, the next in the list was Sajo. Sajo is 16-0, 14 knockouts. He's a big, strong super middleweight, and he is much better than Kuka. And I said to Steve Wood, maybe let's just defend the IBF international title and wait for Kuka. Cullen said, no, I want the European title. I've sold 1,000 tickets from Little Lever. I want it. And that's going to be an absolute war. Anyway, back to your questions.
Back to Conor Benn. So I spoke to you earlier on this year. You said that you felt that Conor was a couple of fights away from David Avanesian. You said Conor would fight him tomorrow, as every fighter would. You've had the couple of fights now. Is that a fight that you would entertain?
Yes, it would. I think he beats Avanesian. It's a really tough fight, right? But if I can make a much bigger name fight than Avanesian, I will. And let's be honest, I mean, you go around... Avanesian is a brilliant fighter, right? Outside of our little small boxing world, he's, you know, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but Adrian Broner and these kind of names, these are names, even Algieri. You know, we saw the viewership in America for that fight on DAZN was huge for the Algieri fight. This is about building a global star. It's not about just doing so because some bloke in an interview on Boxing Social said, oh, they're running and all this. Fuck off, we've got bigger plans than you, mate. Do you know what I mean? You do your thing and we'll see what you do next. We've got a global plan for our fighters that have star potential, and Conor Benn is one of them. We do what we do what we want, and we make the right moves for Conor Benn. We're not hiding, we're not taking easy touches, we're developing at the right time against the right names. Adrian Broner, Robert Guerrero, Sean Porter if he wants to come out. These are the names that are going to fill up the O2 and they're going to make him a global star. And that is the plan for Conor Benn. We know what we're doing. Other people don't know what they're doing. So we'll move at the right pace. Like I said, the development has been perfection with Conor Benn, and 90% of it is down to him because of what he has done in the gym. So we're getting this right. We're not doing it big balls, ego. He called me out. No. We make the right moves. He's making a fortune. Good luck to him. He's going to make a lot of money. He's going to be a massive star.
You mentioned about Australian boxing flying. I watched it again last night. Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos on DAZN. Brilliant fight. This past weekend, Vasily Lomachenko kind of threw himself into the hat. I know Bob Arum's pushing with the WBO. What's the latest? Obviously, you've got Haney with the WBC, Kambosos with the belts and the franchise title. I know that's the fight that you're looking to make, potentially in Australia. Any movement there in your discussion?
Due to have a catch-up with their team, obviously Lou DiBella, Peter Khan, etc. The Arum's pushing of Lomachenko is good news for us because he really has two options. He fights Devin Haney for the undisputed world championship in Australia, or he has just a defence of his titles against Vasily Lomachenko, right? Probably in America or wherever. That's his options. Knowing Kambosos, knowing the fact that he has a chance to be undisputed, a chance to do an easy deal for a lot of money in Australia, Devin Haney is a great front runner. He'll be here this weekend. by the way. Haney. Yeah, Haney. So we'll talk next week. This is the fight to make, and I'm really confident George has enough about him to say, yeah, get me undisputed. I know there's the argument, should be, whatever. This is it. This is the undisputed fight. And then after that, Lomachenko will be mandatory for the winner of that fight. And I know Devin Haney will fight him like that. And Kambosos has big balls too. And by the way, Lomachenko's a brilliant fighter. I just don't see him in the immediate mix with all those names. But he might beat all of them.
Australia still the plan for that? I mean, that's a big play. DAZN looking to make a big play into Australia next year?
The great thing about the global project with DAZN is, and the global platform is, we get to see where he's flying, right? So obviously, every time we do an event, we see the sign-ups, we see the viewership, and Australia every time, obviously for the Kambosos fight, but this is a very important market for us from the summer of this year. Obviously, we've got Brock Jarvis, we've got Dempsey McKean, Ebony Bridges looking to sign Sky Nicholson. Got Liam Paro fighting this weekend. You got Kambosos, not with us, but still huge name. You got Bruno Torimo might become mandatory this weekend. So that is a massive market for us, and we will be there hard next summer. But to enter that market, doing Kambosos against Haney for the undisputed in a stadium with 50 or 60,000 people would be a dream come true. So very excited about that market, as I am about a few markets, but that one particularly is a major focus for us in 2022.
Try and be quick here. Saw you out in Dubai, saw you with Mr. Usyk. What's going on, Joshua Usyk? I mean, it seems to have gone a little bit quieter.
Not really. I mean, we were having a number of site visits out there in the Middle East, talking to people. There's the whole step aside, or those conversations are there to be had, but obviously with Dillian Whyte, etc., I think it's most likely you'll see those two individual fights. And then hopefully an undisputed fight later in the year. So just really looking at the moment places that we could, I'm entertaining conversations about where we could stage those fights. And don't forget, you've got Fury against Whyte. If that goes to purse bids, we need to get our war chest out and have a crack at that. But the main focus, of course, is Usyk against Joshua, because that is a fight we can control.
Any news on the split for Fury-Whyte?
No, and again, very difficult to negotiate without knowing. I keep saying this, and that split will be revealed when purse bids are ordered. But
How many days left?
I mean, there was actually no official date on the email, but probably a week, 2 weeks left. But the issue is when Bob Arum is petitioning for 80-20 and we're petitioning for 55-45 under the max for an interim champion, his offer is going to be at 80-20, and that's not acceptable in our opinion to Dillian Whyte. So I feel like until those splits are revealed, we won't make the progress that we will when that's the case.
Obviously, Dillian Whyte's got the interim title. He's entitled to 45%, 55%, obviously, but that lovely caveat the WBC like to put in there about at the WBC's discretion. Tyson Fury wants 80%. Are they going to have to meet somewhere in the middle? Do you accept that Tyson Fury is the bigger draw in this?
Of course, he's the A side, and he deserves, on paper, the best heavyweight in the world right now. But we can't ignore, number one, the length of time that Dillian Whyte has had to wait, and that is reflective in a governing body's rulings. Number two, the commercial value that Dillian Whyte brings to that fight. He's boxed on pay-per-view on Sky, I think 5 times his headline. He's sold out the O2, other arenas as well. So we accept, of course, Fury's the A side, but we just want to be respected. And if we're not respected, we've got the money to do it ourselves, to make sure he is. So, but we're not looking to be difficult. Yeah, we're going purse bids, yeah. We just want a deal that's fair and respectful to Dillian Whyte.
Do you think if it goes to purse bids with the network politics and promotional politics, we could see Fury vacate or franchised up?
No, I don't think franchise is an option in this situation because of the whole process behind the scenes. So, no, I don't think he'll vacate. I think if it goes to purse bids, listen, they'll probably both make more money if it goes to purse bids. So Fury might be saying, I don't really care if it goes to purse bids, just tell me how much I'm getting. Lovely jubbly.
Where do you think that fight would be? Obviously, I think he's got one left of his deal with ESPN, so they're going to want him on a US time zone for pay-per-view, you would think?
Yeah, if obviously if they get the fight, but I think there's been offers, of course, from the Middle East, but it's a UK fight, really. Millennium Stadium in March would make sense.
Okay, Eddie Hearn, thanks so much for speaking to Boxing Social. Catch up with you soon.
Cheers, mate.